Everybody having a good morning so far here at SFGE? Who in the audience this is their first time? Perfect. Awesome. Welcome, sir. Welcome. So it's great to have you guys, and it's great to have you alumni back. I guess we did a good job last year, so you decided to come back. So that's fantastic. My name is Patrick Wall. I am one of the co-organizers of SFGE, and I will be helping to keep this panel under control. This is a panel called Made Men, and we're going to be talking about the Kingpin project. So I have with me three distinguished gentlemen who are, really incredibly gifted and involved in Kingpin, and they are going to give you guys all the information. So we're going to talk up here for a while, then I'm going to open it up later for questions. So we'll have a mic here, and you guys can just go at it and ask these guys. So I'm going to start from the end. I'm going to do introductions because, as James pointed out the last time they were on a panel, they had to introduce themselves. So on the far end is Jimmy Lipham.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Lipham. Yeah, and so Jimmy is basically a software guy and is really good at programming pinball machines. So Jimmy used to live in Athens, Georgia, and for some reason he left the holy city of Athens. And
he left to get farther away from James.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they ran me off.
So Jimmy's all about the software. And next we have James Laughlin, who used to make ramps and used to have a lot of the company that had a lot of the intellectual property of Williams and Bally. So James has been around the industry for a long time. And then Paul Kiefert, who's a local collector here, who just seems to be engaged in all sorts of interesting projects. And together, these two guys, and I don't know if Jimmy is part of the group as well, but make up what's called the Circus Maximus group.
Three-ring circus.
Okay. So welcome to these guys, and we're gonna get started and talk about Kingpin a little bit. I will admit, I have been working so hard at the show, I have not gotten over to play the game, and I'm excited. Who's played it here? All right, that's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go in depth on this, and I want to start sort of way back in the beginning, because last time we saw you guys, it was all about Pinball Circus. And you guys were working hard trying to make Python Angela's, dream come alive, and you've decided to take a break. And I want to know how sort of you decided to take a break in that and move on to Kingpin. So how did this whole concept come about? How did you guys decide to get involved with this?
Sorry. Oh yeah, they're going to leave it up to me to say this.
James likes to make a short story long, so
you're in for a thrill here. Circus was a game that, of course, we started out with Python Angelo, the late, great Python Angelo, which, if we got talking about him, we would be here for days. His dream was to bring that game to production. Working with him, we realized, and he realized, that the game needs some redesign. So we built the first Whitewood we modeled it after the original. We played it, people played it. It's an okay game, and that's giving it a lot of credit. The game needs a lot of help to get it to be the great game that it needs to be to carry on his legacy.
It plays like a novelty, not like a pinball.
Yeah, it really does. And we're not going to put lipstick on it and say that it's not a pig. It plays like a pig, okay. So Mark Ritchie, Paul and I were at a pre-Chicago Expo dinner, and we were sitting with Mark Ritchie, and he asked us if we'd be interested in doing Kingpin, and if we were, he'd be in on it. And so that was in 2014. It was shortly after Python passed away. We sort of thought about it, but we were busy with Circus. We wanted to get that first prototype done. So we got the first prototype done, Then we started talking to Mark some more about it, and he really wants to see that game done almost as bad as Python wanted to see Circus done. The decision to switch from Circus to Kingpin is twofold, so to speak, pretty much. One, Kingpin is a ready-to-go kind of design. We don't have to do a redesign. Mm-hmm. We don't have to put $200,000 into it to develop the game. It's pretty much design ready. Software-wise, a little bit of tweaking, but that's easy. Jimmy will tell you that. So the decision was to put the Kingpin not on the shelf. We still sort of work on it, or sorry, not Kingpin, the Circus on the shelf a little bit. Bring Kingpin into production. The goal is the money that comes in from Kingpin will go towards the research and development of the new Python's Pinball Circus. So that's pretty much why we switched from one to the other.
And tell us a little bit about the history of Kingpin. I mean, so Mark Ritchie was at Capcom. What all went down? There were only 9 prototypes made. You know, what happened during that era?
The number of prototypes made is, some people say 10, some people say 9. One got burned up in a fire. How many remaining? The best that we can tell is there's 9, including ours, remaining, maybe 10.
And when they made the prototypes, they might have ordered 25 playfields or 25 cabinets, but they only assembled 10, and the rest are to spec the parts to make sure they meet production standards. So there were spare parts that existed, but there were only 9 or 10 games that were assembled. The same thing happened with Big Bang Bar, both of those games. And there was another game that didn't go into production too. Was that Redline Fever?
Redline Fever was another one. Zingy Bingy, of course. How many have ever heard of the Zingy Bingy project? Yeah, that one prototype that was built is now out in California at a good friend Steve Sabota's house, and he got to play it. He broke it.
You broke it.
He doesn't get to play it anymore. But the Kingpin was, according to Mark, approximately 90% ready. They actually had put it out on location to test it. Capcom, because Mark Ritchie worked at Williams, Python worked at Williams, Williams filed a lawsuit against Capcom for breach of contract, with them, Capcom, taking away the designers and the employees. And then they got a TRO, restraining order, to prevent them from going into production, which basically led to the demise of the pinball division of Capcom. So they folded up. That was the end of it. The prototype Kingpins were made. They dispersed out into the world, and so that was pretty much the end of it. Capcom folded up. Mark Ritchie has not been in pinball since. Python was never again in pinball officially. So a lot of the really talented people that were at Capcom never were able to get back into pinball, because at that point, Williams was the only game in town. And Williams didn't want to hire them back because they abandoned ship and went to Capcom. So they were in limbo. They stayed in the industry, the amusement industry, but they never got back into pinball.
Well, guys, we're going to interrupt this program for a special announcement, I guess. Walter Day and Billy Mitchell are here, and they actually wanted to come up and say a few words. Will you hand me that mic over there? Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt here, guys.
Walter.
Thank you for letting us to barge in and interrupt like this. But as you know, we have now a long tradition of making trading cards that commemorate not only the huge, span of the culture of the gaming age, what have you, but to also honor individual contributions, people who have done tremendous things for the global pinball/video game industry. And we finally caught up with someone who is very deserving of being on a trading card and getting a trading card award to hang on their wall. And it's none other than the legendary, unstoppable, absolutely amazing James Laughlin.
All right, James. Well deserved.
Of the 4 guys up here, who would have guessed that it would have been James and not the other 3? But to talk a little bit about him, I find it very unique. I'll save the punchline for the end. But he actually became famous because there were so many pinball machines that were not discarded or parted out or just trashed, because he created or made a business out of making replacement parts, replacement ramps, things that just didn't exist. Am I correct? And you don't have to be modest. I'm not modest. Just let it go, you know?
Yes, I was the ramp guy. No longer the ramp guy. Larry Rosenthal is now the ramp guy, thank God. But yeah, we've actually made over 30,000 replacement ramps for primarily the Williams Valley games, and that was over a period of 12 to 13 years. So this is great.
And you did it at a point in time when people basically thought it would never be done because it's just not profitable. And there's so many things we do in the industry that's not profitable, so it doesn't
There
really
was a
matter.
lot of factors that went into it. Y'all want to hear about the Gene Cunningham story, anybody? Y'all don't have enough time, trust me.
James likes to be told he can't do it, and then he proves people.
Yeah, Gene Cunningham told me I couldn't do it, so he gets some of the credit because I told him yes I could, and but it was a costly endeavor, and it was something that making the tools, creating that business was not a cheap endeavor, and it was something that I just decided we were trying to restore games and couldn't get the parts, so we decided to make them, and that was.
It's a way of preserving history and having it carry forward.
Yeah, there's that too.
He's also a founding member of Circus Maximus.
Yeah, hopefully that's going to be the credit that I really want to take for it.
But I got to say, the thing that I know you most, I think about most, and I look at you, I'm sorry to say this, but you're in far better shape than I expected. Because he has a habit, he has a hobby, he has a passion for dirt bikes, and every time he gets on a dirt bike, he wrecks it. That's another thing you got a legacy for.
Yeah, the last time I was on one 4 weeks ago, I'm still hopping around with the ankle and the knee from that one.
So every year you come to the show, take a look at him, and you'll see how recently he wrecked the bike. I mean, I think I wrecked the bike the second time I got on it, and I never did after that, but I don't know. You're a legend.
I'm a glutton for punishment on that. Well, I'm a glutton for punishment altogether, but there again, stories are, we don't have time.
So again, absolutely and sincerely, we'd like to give you this. Again, it shows your place in history. Your place will never be lost. It's there. It's in writing. It'll be on the wall. It'll be something your grandkids will talk about.
This is great.
Yeah. You guys, you want to walk around and get a picture? Mark, you can go.
Yeah. So anyway, these awards we get for the trading cards are interesting family heirlooms, because, this could be hanging on your wall, 4 generations from now. Your great-great-grandchildren will be hanging this, and people come in and see this on the wall and say, what did he do? And they'll be so proud of the fact that he was one of the founding members of the revival of the Cohen Age and the commemoration of the Cohen Age. And we saw him.
Andy wrecked his bike.
And we actually saw him on the stage at the Pinball Expo making a presentation, because you inducted Gordon Horlock into the into the Pinball Expo Hall of Fame. And I remember thinking at the time, God, this guy's a great speaker. And now here we are giving him an award, 6-8 months later. So thank you very much. Thanks for letting us interrupt, Patrick.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Billy, for coming by. That's awesome.
Where were we?
Oh, I remember, because I'm the moderator. What's my job?
That is great. It really is an honor. I appreciate it, Billy, Walter. Thank you very much.
And well-deserved, James. Well-deserved. Cool. All right, so Kingpin, you have this conversation with Mark, and then I just can't fathom going from, how did you know what it looked like? And like you guys had to go and take a good look at one of these very rare prototypes, I would imagine.
So at first, we really didn't make the decision to switch to Kingpin until Expo. Basically, after he inducted Gordon Horlick on the way home from Expo on the 12-plus hour drive, we were delirious already from lack of sleep. We talked about, should we do this, could we do this, and could we do it by Texas in March? And so from sheer lack of sleep, we decided, yes, we can do this, and told Ed at TPF we would be there, and we would be there with Kingpin. And I think that was, middle of October?
Yeah. And the other catalyst behind it is the aforementioned Steve Sabota. Does anybody here know Steve Sabota? If you know him, you are a better person. He is that kind of an individual. He is one of the most humble, sincere, just beautiful people you ever meet. He has an original Kingpin, and he allowed us to go out to his house. And when I say his house, his bedroom is as big as my house, but you'd never know Steve to have 2 dimes. And he let us go out to his house and essentially he
went out to get ingredients for pizza, and he came back and his Kingpin was strewn across all his other rare games. King Kong had parts of Kingpin on it. All this was all strewn across his game room. And we're, of course, playing it up. We're going, oops, and making all sorts of noises while we're taking his game apart. But we're like any good Boy Scout. We left the game better than we found it, shopped it for him when we did it.
And it was Jimmy's second anniversary, so...
we took him away from his wife to go out. We actually brought the wife with
Yeah, we brought her. That was the way that he convinced me. James said, actually, I'm helping your marriage. It'd be great if you came out here with us and Steve lives outside of LA. So, yeah, he was like, hey, why don't you go do this? I was like, it's my anniversary. I don't know how I'll ever do that. We'll fly her out, too, and take her to Disney World or Disneyland. And, so we all ended up making the trek out. Yeah.
But after we took the game apart, Steve kind of at dinner, he goes, hey, if I happen to have a cabinet in a playfield, would that be helpful to you? And of course the answer was yes. And because Steve's plan all along was, hey, I got these spare parts, I'd like to build another Kingpin out of all the Capcom parts. He had board sets from Airborne. And what he actually did it arrived at the end of December, a crate arrived from Steve with a Kingpin cabinet, a Kingpin playfield, some extra parts, and a donor Airborne, which we completely took apart and strewn across James' basement to scavenge for some of the other parts that we needed.
Now, how did he arrive at one of these? Like, how did he get?
So he's a well-known collector.
Okay.
Who has a lot of those type of games.
He is a
Capcom collector.
Yeah, he is a avid Capcom collector. And that's why he ended up with the Zingy Bingy. I believe he does have every Capcom. He does have the box that could be sort of construed as the Red Line Fever that Greg Kamick designed, and the story behind that was that Steve always wanted whatever remnants existed from that. Greg had it in his garage, and for whatever reason, Greg Kamick, with the designer of the game, took it all apart and put it in a cardboard box. It was just a cardboard box full of parts in a playfield, and Steve ends up with it. So he does have every piece that Capcom put together. But he's, again, I can't speak highly enough of Steve. If you ever go to Chicago, the Chicago Expo, or some of the Texas, or the California shows, try to look him up, because he's just a great person.
He is the main reason that we were able to complete that game out there. We turned the first screw on it December 29th, I think it was, and we had it at Texas, was it the 15th or 18th or something of March?
Yeah.
And kind of the story when we got to Texas with it, about 21 days before Texas, we decided that the clear coat on the playfield, remember this is a original playfield, wasn't handling the wear well. So we had no choice but to take the game completely apart that we had just spent 2 months putting together, take it completely apart, get it clear coated, and put it back together. So we took it apart on a Saturday, got it clear coated on a Monday. put it back together or we picked it up on Wednesday, put it back together on the following Saturday. So less than a week, we completely tore it apart and built Kingpin for a second time. And we get it to Texas. We still had not played, because you don't want to play on a new clear-coated playfield. You want them to cure, otherwise you can have all sorts of problems. For the next 3 weeks while we were working on the game and tweaking it, we didn't put any balls in the game. We were using our fingers to trigger everything. So we had still never played a full game of Kingpin ourselves. We get to Texas, everybody wants to buy a translate. We turn the game on, walk away. It plays the entire 3 days.
That's unbelievable.
Incredibly well. And I think 2 or 3 days later, we got to play with Steve Sabota or something like that.
That's
We finally got our first game on.
They had a 1-hour vendor night. I forget which. I think it was the Saturday night. And that was the first time any of us actually got to play a full game on that. There are probably some of you that played more games on that than we have, but we just haven't had the opportunity to play it. But
the pucker factor was pretty high when you flip that game on and you walk away, and you're not entirely sure it's going to play correctly.
So let's talk about parts. And then we're going to talk about some software stuff. So I'm coming to you, Jimmy. Get ready, buddy.
No worries.
So
he lives in Texas. Who cares?
I would assume that some of the parts were available just sort of as general Capcom parts that were used in different games, but there had to be some that were custom that you guys had trouble finding, right?
There were quite a few, and we were fortunate that part of when James bought Gene Cunningham's archives, I guess you would call them, or parts business, James has a lot of the original Capcom documentation. So he's got a original cabinet diagram. He's got some of the Kingpin stuff we found. And so either between diagrams that we did have or original parts, and we have a full playfield PDF of the CAD, we were able to recreate. Probably one of the more difficult things to recreate were the ball guides. Because there were none of those that existed. We got photos and scans of the ones off of Steve's game, but we had to create CAD diagrams for all of these things before we could have a metal house, manufacture those for us. And so we take this PDF file, we have it printed out full size, and we're measuring, and one of our engineers is there importing it, making 3D models of it, and interestingly, they worked mostly, other than a couple of them and a hole or two being off. They were pretty darn accurate after we had them made the first time.
Now, did you have to? You're big into 3D printing, I know. Did you have to 3D print anything yourself?
We did a couple parts that were temporary for the most part on that. Unlike Circus, where we could build, we had 3D scans of the big mechanisms on there, the elephant and things like that. It wasn't as necessary for Kingpin.
Wow, and the plastics, you guys just scan those and have those?
Yeah, and there's an interesting story about the plastics. If you look at our game, we were going to announce this on April 1st, but I forgot. We were going to announce that just like acid wash jeans, we were going to offer pre-worn plastics in our game. And that's purely because when we scanned Steve's game, we forgot that some of the screw heads had worn a little bit on the plastics. So you'll see in our game, we actually have those exactly, a crack. That's not really a crack. We scanned the crack in from it. And we forgot in our time crunch of 2.5 months of getting the game ready to go back and repair those in the image before we had them made. So, you'll see it if you look at the game closely. You'll see a couple of them on there like that.
In the furniture biz, they call that distressed.
Yeah, it should cost more, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's relic,
yeah. All right, so that's the parts, but there's some electronics that go in the back of these things, and Jimmy, you're the man on that.
Oh boy.
So talk a little bit about, I know you use P-Rock to drive the whole thing, but there may be people in the room who don't know what P-Rock is.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So P-Rock is basically a pinball control system that's made by Multimorphic. They make the P3, and they started out doing custom games. So they would sell to custom game makers, and basically it's the driver boards and stuff like that that allow you to hook all of your voltages up and kind of drive things through software. It kind of makes it like playing with Legos. It all kind of hooks together. But now they've moved upstream, and they sell to a lot of big name manufacturers now. So they sell into Spooky Pinball, American Pinball, and a few others basically that use their board systems in order to produce their games. And
we really had to use something different. I'll let Jimmy explain. There's some issues with the original Capcom board.
Yeah, so the Capcom boards, the problem with them is really the CPUs. So when Big Bang Bar was made, all of that was made with original hardware, and that original hardware was basically new old stock. And Gene exhausted the entire set of boards, in addition to anyone he worked with. And basically, it was basically what had happened is we didn't have anything else that we could really take a sample of. And from game to game on Capcom, the boards were all slightly different. And so we didn't really have anything to work with for Kingpin. And the big limiting factor is there's an FPGA on the CPU, which is basically a black box. We can't read the data off of the FPGA, and it's controlling the timings. And so we're kind of having to reverse engineer things outside of that. So it all uses basically a P-Rock. We are emulating the code. So if you actually go on the floor and play the game, it is the original code from 1996, reproduced and all that good stuff. And that's basically what's making it tick right in there.
So, sorry, talk to me like I'm a sixth grader.
Sure.
So you're emulating the hardware with the original, and you're running the original code on the emulated hardware, kind of like MAME, right?
Yeah, basically. So the Capcom system, we're emulating all of the original game code. So it says, hey, turn this coil on. We catch that. So there's the custom code in the emulator that catches that event and says, okay, P-Rock system, drive that.
Okay.
And that's what's happening basically with everything. There's a translator in there. And it's the same thing for when we read the switches off of the hardware. We send that back. So the emulator that's actually running inside the game thinks that it's on the original hardware.
That's cool. Hey, all right, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but I wanted to ask this question because I'm interested. I want to be a P-Rock programmer.
Okay.
Say I did. I don't, but say I did. What's involved with that? I mean, if you're going to go and program your P-Rock, are you going to sit down and write what kind of code? Is it C? Is it a custom language? Is there an integrated development environment where you can drag and drop stuff? Tell me about it.
All of the above.
Oh, boy. Well, it kind of depends. From a programming level, basically everything the P-Rock is written in Python. So if you know the Python language, you can effectively customize an existing game. So if you have a Williams or Stern game, you can actually write custom rules for that just with one board. If you set up pretty much a fully custom built game, you can actually buy the P-Rock driver boards and the CPUs and things like that. And it's all in Python. We have a game framework. We have people that are using it, TNA, Alice Cooper, Houdini, all of those games. And of course, even all the Dutch pinball ones, Barada Pinball 2, everything like that. It pretty much all uses the same framework under the hood. So if you can learn Python, you can pretty much write in that framework, and it doesn't take much, a couple lines of code really to get a game flipping. You can get a whitewood flipping in an afternoon.
I mean, there's examples like Cactus Canyon Continued. Eric was not a programmer.
Yeah, Cactus Canyon Continued. Yeah. So Eric Priepke, who actually did that game, he wasn't a programmer ahead of time. Like he was not in the industry, and he learned that as he went along. So.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
All right, so as you guys were making the game, did you have to, let's see how to best ask this without insulting Mark Ritchie. Were there any sort of original design pieces that you guys felt like you had to tweak? Do you have to move any ramps, any guides, or?
Not really. When we first looked at the game, we first played Steve Sabota's game.
We played two when we were out there, and they both played completely different.
We played, another friend, Randy Peck, has a game at his warehouse. Another individual, just a great individual, has a huge warehouse with a collection. We were able to go in and play his game, and it played really dull. And we were concerned that we were going to run into the same thing that we're running into with Circus, that we're just going to be producing another pig. And so when we went to Steve's, it played faster, but once we took it apart, put it back together, and got everything working on it, the thumper bumpers there was one thumper bumper not working, a couple other small issues, got it waxed out, put it back together, that thing plays great. If you play this game, it's a game that doesn't need redesigning. It's ready to go.
At one point, Mark said he wasn't really sure about the captive ball over there, and it's a shot that it's a big mix. But overall, the game played incredibly well, enough that we both left there going, this doesn't need to be significantly changed at all.
Now, we do plan to put upgrades to it. The slot machine will be upgraded probably to a LCD screen. The building, the Lex Hotel, along with the back box, the skyline that's back there, will probably go with a 3D setup like Back Alley Creation has created, if you're familiar with their product. So we're going to try to put some modern effects to it, but the gameplay itself, no, there's really nothing that we see that needs to be done. Software-wise, Jimmy can tell you what we plan to do with that. You want to take that?
Well, actually, so I'm handling pretty much all the lower-level systems, the emulation code. So anything that was written in 1996, unfortunately, falls on me, and which is really interesting because with the emulation piece, there are actually bugs in the original game code. So every single time that we run across something where there's a problem, we don't know if it's a bug in the original code or in our emulator or somewhere else. So it's really kind of difficult to diagnose that. We're having to kind of troubleshoot 3 places. But in the event that the 1996 code is a little too old school for you, Paul is actually leading up a development on a newer version of the software. So when you actually boot the game up, you'll have an option as far as which one you potentially want to play. So you can play the new and improved, HD, Kingpin HD type stuff, or you can play the original game as it was, pretty much in the same hardware stack, so all in the same game.
Like Atari did with Asteroids and Asteroids Deluxe. Yeah, you're making it harder. Yeah, right.
It essentially is going to be 2 software packages. One's going to be related to the other, but it will be a modern software package, so you will be playing 2 different games essentially within that game, or have the choice. It'll be a player option. It won't be an operator option. So there are 2 software packages within the game. The rule sets will be slightly different, maybe even significantly different in some cases, but it's going to be very unique in that aspect, that we're going to take the old school software and new software and put both of them into the same package. What's playing out there right now is pretty much the old software. So none of the new code is being played in that at this time. That's very little.
In general, we don't necessarily look at this game as a remake, as an AFM. There are, or Medieval Madness, there are thousands of those games out there. When Doug made those games, you compare it to the original. There were only 9 of the Kingpins. So we want to pay very, good homage to the original game. But this is, we also look at it as, what if it was built today, what would you do? And that's why the LCD screen is in there the way it is, to give you that option, and that old school players can still play it as it was intended. But if you want kind of the new experience, a la any of the new Spooky games or Stern games with those type of graphics, you'll be able to pick that option when you turn the game on.
Yeah, and it's also Mark being on board with it, and Stan, the artist, both of them are excited about the project. Matter of fact, Paul has talked to even
the original Dots guys, Kevin Loza, and they all want to see their project, other people get to experience their project. Capcom was trying, especially the Dots guys, they wanted to do something that was significantly better than what Williams was doing. Their goal was to do something above what the current norm was. And they all feel like they had kind of done that, and then these games never got released. Right. So nobody got to see what they worked so hard on. So they're all really excited about it.
So what it comes down to is basically the game. It's almost like they were developing a game until 1996, and think of it as it just was a long coffee break before the game picked up and the development continued, and so now it has continued. So it's, as Paul is saying, it's not a remake of something. It is a continuation, a development continuation of something that started in 1996, and that's what the plans are with it.
Well, speaking of plans, what are the plans for getting this out to the market? Like I see people's faces out there; they want to buy one. How would what's the future plan for the manufacturing and the selling? And there's their lines. How are you guys going to handle all that?
Well, we're going to take deposits and skip out to the Bahamas.
Now, we operate a little different than most of the other companies that had tried this. We recognize what the difficult part is, and that's building the games. A lot of people get to that point and then fail spectacularly. So I'll let James go into a little more. We have several options to get this built. The last stop, we can build these ourselves. That's not our. We would rather partner with someone to build them.
The one thing that we're not doing is taking deposits. In my business, the business that Walter and Billy referred to, the ramp business, not one time did I take a deposit for any product. All three have the same philosophy, which is why we're a good team. If we're going to build a product and you believe in that product, then you're the one that makes the investment in it, and if it succeeds, you get the profit. The customer is not the one that should take the risk. Mm-hmm. So we don't do deposits. We raise the money to do our own development. As far as going into production, there are essentially three ways to do it. We can put it on a production line like Stern was doing originally doing with Medieval Madness, so we can go to a third party and do it that way. We can do it ourselves, pretty much in the mold of what Charlie Spooky's been doing, slowly grinding out. He started out 5-10 games a month, and he's built up to, I think, maybe 25. So we could go that route. And the other way we can do it is to have companies do sub-assemblies or assemblies, and then we put the final product together ourselves. So that's the three ways to do it. And if you're thinking, well, why haven't they decided yet? We have not completed what they call the BOM on that game. That's the phase we're in right now. We've got to create the BOM. We have not announced. The other trap that a lot of companies have fallen into is they come out at a seminar and say, we're going to build a game, it's going to cost X amount, and give us some money, and we're going to just keep going. And a lot of you know the history of some of those companies. We're not going to announce a price until we know what it costs us. And when we know what we would like to get it in at, we'd love to get it in between $7,000 and $8,000, but we can't guarantee that. And who knows, when we come in less, it'd be tough, but maybe. We don't know. So we're not going to put a number out there that people are going to run with and say, well, you said it was going to cost X amount. We're not going to do that. So this is our last show until Chicago and Florida we're going to. Most likely.
So most likely that game will be taken apart in the next week again, because we have to count every screw, every washer, every tiny little bit that goes in that, measure the wires, how much wire is in there, how much are the wiring harnesses going to cost. All of that has to be done. And not only done that, if we build 250 of these, how much does it save us if we build 1,000 of them and buy those parts up front? So we're doing basically multiple BOMs at different quantity levels for everything, screws, down to that level.
Every part in that machine, even a screw, you have to have an engineer drawing. Well, maybe not all the screws. You can buy those at Home Depot sometimes. But every component of that game has to have an engineer drawing. The fortunate thing, as Paul mentioned earlier, is I do have a lot of those archives of the engineered drawings. The other question that we're still having to answer or decide is whether we're going to continue with more Capcom parts, or if we're going to use generic off-the-shelf flipper mechs, drop targets, and things like that.
We have the drawings for the flippers and the pop-top.
We've got the drawings, the Capcom drawings, but is it going to be cost-effective to do that?
And every part that has to be manufactured from that engineering diagram. You have to order sample parts, wait for those to come back. You got to compare them to your diagram. Does it match? Okay, now if it matches that, does it fit your machine that you're building? And there may be iterations on every one of those diagrams that goes through. I mean, the pinball circus engineering diagrams we have 5, 6, 7 revisions on some of them, and they have to be signed off on each time those go through. So it's between now and towards the end of the year, that is the bulk of what we will be working on. It is that type of detail to get to that BOM to exactly know what it's going to cost us to build.
And we still will be building a second Whitewood based on what parts we decide that we're going to go with. So it's we've got a lot to do, but we're going methodically. We're not going to just make a promise, put something out there that's subpar, or again take somebody's money and not put something out there and people are left at a loss. So we just don't do that.
One of the reasons that game that's in the game room is Capcom parts as much as possible is we have something to compare our changes to. Let's say it's too expensive, maybe it's 4 times more expensive to remanufacture the Capcom parts, and we try Williams flippers and Williams pop bumpers. We now have the game side by side, and we can tell, is it detriment? Does the gameplay suffer because of making that change or not? It gives us the ability to compare to what is essentially as close to the original as you can get. So that gives us a baseline to compare all those changes to.
And that also is the reason we built that first circus, is that when we make changes to it, we can go back and look at how the original game played, and are we improving it, and are we going in a forward direction with it? You have to have for us, we have to have that baseline to compare to before we can make changes and confirm or decide they're not, whether they are good changes or whether they're not good changes.
We also operate under WWJD, what would Jimmy do? And so that's always in our
but we're not moving to Texas because he did do that. Skip down.
So what is the deal? Just 1 or 2 more questions, and then I want to hand it over to you guys. So be thinking of your questions for the panel. What was the deal with the Translite that you guys have printed?
So we, as we mentioned, we're not a deposit type company or a pre-order type company, but we wanted a way to kind of gauge interest in, not just, hey, join our wait list, and people, even if they're not remotely interested, get on there just because they may want it later. We thought that making these translates, 1, people have not seen a Kingpin. It's something that's a collectible. And 2, we thought it might help give us more of an accurate gauge of, is there enough interest to build this game? And we have more, we limited it to 250. We're already approaching 200 sold very closely. And James kind of came up with this idea of, hey, let's tie it to a waiting, holding a spot on the list for you. It's a completely optional thing in that it's not tying you to buy a game. It's when we get to production, in the order that the translates were sold, you will have the opportunity to buy a production Kingpin. And on that note, we've donated the first translate to Project Pinball, and they're auctioning it off. So if you want the very first production Kingpin, or the option to purchase the very first production Kingpin, it's on an auction. It's an online auction, but I believe between 12 and 3, they're doing an auction just down the hall here, and they've told us that they will have a computer to allow you to bid from in that section. It was the only kind of idea. We're like, what are we going to do with number 1?
That's a great idea.
I don't want game number 1. I'll wait towards the end. I want to get this game out into as many people as possible. So we thought donating it was a fair thing to do.
Yeah, that's a neat idea. Yeah, so in that, the proceeds go to Project Pinball.
Yeah, on that first one, everything goes to them on that one, yes.
And a Stern Translate, if you just buy one of those, are over $100, and we thought getting them signed. And we share, when we sell those, we pay Stan and we pay Mark Ritchie, because we feel all of us should profit from this game. Not just, there are other people who have made games, Jim Cunningham, and not involve the original guys. And we don't operate.
Yeah, and that's what he's hitting on there, is that Stan and Mark, the primary 2 contributors to the original design and the artwork, are part of this project, and they will be getting royalties from the game. We're not leaving them out. Legally, we could have, but as to us, just not the right thing to do. Plus, having them on board gives the project credit. And also with the translights, they got royalties off of that. And it's something that they appreciate it, we appreciate it. So everybody wins. How many people here have got one of our translights? How many don't have one? Okay.
Now, do you have those in the booth?
We have them in the booth too, yeah. So if you were to buy one from the booth, I think 196 is the number
we've
to
got
start with. So, but if you want number one, Project Pinballs.
Yeah.
To go.
Yeah.
What happened? We actually, Paul here sort of jumped it at Texas. We came up with the idea, and we had 35 of them at Texas, and he goes ahead and puts them on the website thinking, well, we've got 35 printed.
We probably won't sell them all.
We'll sell a few at Texas, and we'll sell a few online. Well, within, I think, 48 hours, we had already gotten over 100, and so we actually pulled the plug on it as far as the sales, and we just started those back up within the last week and a half.
We didn't feel it was right to take an order for something that I still was several weeks or months away from shipping. I don't like owing people something that they paid for, so we paused it for it was May 18th or something, or 20th. We stopped them, and we didn't start shipping and selling, taking money for them again, despite requests for it, until about 7 or 10 days ago.
And we haven't actively put it out there that they're selling again, so because we wanted some here at the show. So you do have the opportunity to, once it hits 250, we cut that off. That doesn't mean we're only going to make 250 Kingpins. We may or may not. Who knows? We're going to make as many as the market demands.
Sure.
Hopefully we'll. If we can't get to 250, then. But I think that based on what we're seeing, the interest in the game is there.
Cool.
It's really exciting. We didn't expect the amount of feedback we got, the positive feedback we got from Texas and here at this show. We also took it down to a charity show down in Florida, and it was very well received there. As a matter of fact, Gary Stern played it, and he enjoyed it. And there's a good story behind that one, but we won't say that in public.
Well, let's take a pause and let our cool audience here ask you guys some questions. So I will ask that you guys use the mic so that we can capture this on the recording device. Who's first?
My name's Rob Jones. A couple questions, if you don't mind. The first one is, you kind of touched on the end. You talked about royalties. Are there any licensing issues that you guys are facing? I mean, is there a chance that as a potential buyer that, hey, I know I really want this game, but you build these prototypes and then there's legal disputes about, hey, is it allowed to have Capcom on the side of it or anything? Maybe could you address that?
Well, Capcom's not going to be on it because it's not a Capcom game anymore. Capcom Pinball's gone. As far as the trademark goes, Planetary Pinball had the trademark application in, but they never used if anybody's familiar with trademark applications and use, you have to have a statement of use in order to retain or actually legally own the trademark. And they had the application in, they never used it, they weren't going to use it. So Matt Cristiano, I don't know, most people probably know Rick Bartlett at Planetary Pinball, but Matt is really the chairman of the board and the money guy. Matt and I get along very well. We're good friends, and I went to him when we decided we were going to do this project, told him what was going on, and sort of explained to him, hey, look, you don't have a statement of use, you're not going to use it, so let's work something out. Matt's very easy to get along with, and so we worked that out, but at the same time, Paul had this great idea with, I don't know if you've seen them, the lapel pins. That line of product that we're starting up, also to fund the Kingpin project. And in the content of negotiating to get the trademark, we also negotiated to get the rights to make Williams Bally enamel pins, the lapel pins. So it's sort of a win-win on that front. So Matt, when I won't get back into the Gene thing because that's where it all got started as far as Matt and my relationship, but he's a great guy to get along with, so that part of it is a non-issue. Capcom, there may still be, we're still in touch with Capcom indirectly to find out if they still want or still have residual claims to the license. And if they do, we've already got the wheels in motion to take care of that. It's not something that we're just going to blindly go into and say, we're going to build a machine and who cares? And that's being done through another company that is interested in doing Big Bang Bar. I'm not going to mention the company. Y'all can go out, speculate. Most people pretty much know, or a lot of people know who it is, but it's not going to be an issue.
Do you have time for a follow-up question?
Oh, yeah.
This bill materials list, or bill of
The BOM?
Yeah. BOM. How close are you on that, you think?
Well, the first stage of it is to get the engineer drawings. And what you do with the engineer drawings, you send them out to vendors, and the vendors come back and give you quotes on quantities. Where we are right now is compiling all the drawings. And so maybe 70% of that. Some of the stuff on that game, we fabricated ourselves in-house.
So we had drawings made.
We had to make drawings. Steve Sabota, when we were out there, we had to get the measurements that in order to create the engineered drawings off of. So we're probably 70% there, but that also is, it's two-phased, as I was mentioning earlier. Are we going to use the original Capcom parts and use those drawings, or use the off-the-shelf generics? Thumper bumpers, I think generic stuff works great. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel there. Flipper mechs is still a question mark. Are the Capcom flipper mechs the better mech to use in there, and will it be cost effective? If it is, we're going to look at that, entertain that. Other ones like drop targets, Paul has done more research on that side of it.
On that, but
yeah. Oh, good. You want to start? You want to fill me in?
I think I may have found the tool for the drop targets.
Woohoo! You're talking about the actual
The plastic, yeah.
Foremost?
No.
Oh, darn.
So anyway, that's where we're at. Once we get all the engineer drawings and decide which way we want to go, we already know what the generic parts are going to cost. Now we send out the engineer drawings for the more Capcom specific
But even
stuff.
the star posts were different in Kingpin than any of the other machines. So they are slightly different height. Not only the star posts, but the pencil ones were different also. Mm-hmm. So we did find some original ones that we had to have shipped from a land down under. But those, again, we'll have to, should we get those made to keep it, that same way, or is it something that would be replaced by a more standard star post?
And on one note, the plastic ramps that are on there, I actually acquired with the Gene thing, as I call it, the original ramp tool for that game. So that is about $5,000 that we don't have to spend on the tooling for the ramps. John.
Hey guys, my name is John Schlarb. First, a comment on the game. I played it in Texas at the Pinball Festival there, and played it last night. It seems like the game has gotten 1,000% better. That can't be, so it must be me. I must be finally finding the shots, but it flowed so well. I really enjoyed playing that last night. Question for mainly Paul and Jimmy. you guys you're young, so you probably have jobs. How do you find the time to devote to this on top of your jobs you already have? The Mountain Dew.
Yeah, Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew. This is actually in our contract rider. When we bring a game to a show, we require Diet Mountain Dew.
So that's the first question. The second is, James, are there going to be any Corgi Easter eggs in the game?
James has 6 corgis. Well, 5 corgis in one pig.
We are putting Easter eggs in there. I don't know that we've discussed corgis, but that is a good idea. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll run with that.
Yeah. So you're asking how we find time, right? Paul and I both have day jobs. James is gainfully unemployed, and but basically, it's a lot of nights and weekends. I'm under contract with about 5 different amusement companies right now, and Circus Maximus is one of them. But thankfully, I'm able to fairly well plan out that work. And really how we get it done, when I have to do work on the game, Paul also has to do work on the game, and there's only one game. So what we do is we FaceTime, and Paul sets the phone between the flippers, and I'm flashing code to the game from 950 miles away, and I basically ask him, is it on fire yet? Okay, no. Well, then
I'm striking poses, and he's not even looking at me.
I'm looking at a different monitor. But yeah, Paul is taking phallic pictures with his phone while I'm trying to work on the game. And
speaking of that,
so that's kind of how that works. That's how that flow works. And typically it's a lot of nights and weekends is sort of the deal. But typically we'll kind of plan out a roadmap that says, okay, our next show is X, Y, and we want to have these features in. But the baseline code of what you're seeing was done completely remotely over the span of about 2 weeks. Is about what it took to write the baseline emulation on top of pin name and the hardware stuff.
Yeah, I'd go to work. I'd get home at 6-ish. I'd go down to the basement, crack a few Diet Mountain Dews, and we'd work till 1 or 2 in the morning trying to get the emulation set up. So it's rinse, lather, repeat, drink more Mountain Dew.
That's kind of how it is, yeah.
And I haven't had a real job for 30 years, so that helps me.
You said Pinball Circus is not ready for prime time. Do you really think that you can make it into a game that'll be something that you can sell for prime time? Is it just,
yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
it's just so unconventional. And you really make it into a...
So the type of changes, we've started laying out the next whitewood. So the first whitewood for Circus is done. It's going to stay pretty much the way it is. It's not P-Rock. The second game, whitewood, will be P-Rock. And the things we're exploring and actually cutting on the whitewood is it needs to play more like a pinball machine. So Python wanted the snake in the game, and the first whitewood we did, that's really the only change we made from the original is we put the snake back in. And there's a long story about why the snake was taken out. If you played the one at the Hall of Fame, the flippers are not at the same level. They've been moved because they took the snake out. The snake doesn't really work the way it is. We've tried a solenoid. We've tried a servo, and it just doesn't work well. So we want it to play more like a pinball machine, and that includes things that are common to a pinball machine, such as instead of launching the ball out through the center, we're going to move the ball launch over to the right-hand side with a plunger. And when we do that, we can now add a skill shot, which everybody knows is in pinball. And the skill shot could be something like with the Lolita that spins, there's actually a proximity sensor underneath the playfield, so you might have to launch it and roll over the Lolita sensor on there, and that could be one of the skill shots. And it's also taking the snake out and probably repurposing the snake. So, and making the game slightly longer. There's a lot, mainly moving the flippers down slightly further will make the shots a little better. And every shot on that game basically goes to the right-hand side. So we're looking at what can do. It's still going to be very, very heavily the Pinball Circus that Python designed with some tweaks like that. And most of the tweaks we're exploring right now are on the lower main part of the main playfield.
It's not a balanced game, and that's why it plays like a pig. As he mentioned, every shot goes to the right-hand side. Shoot right. It's just not, it does not have any flow. It's not going to take we're not going to tear up the original design and start over. We're going to enhance the design. Again, it's sort of like the design quit in 1995, and we're going to pick it up and continue it. The design was never complete, whereas Kingpin, the design was pretty much complete. It's just the game itself.
And as far as the game script, Python wanted it. He wanted 7. So Python's special number was the number 7. 7. That's why there's 7 flippers in the game. He wants 7 ringmasters. So there'll be a ringmaster, like a Chinese circus ringmaster, an American Ringling Brothers style. And so he wants you to play, and each one of those ringmasters would have different tasks to complete to collect them. And we even talked about allowing you to pick which ringmaster you're going to play, a la Doctor Who, when you kind of start the game. So there's things that will be changed physically with as far as the play fields, but there's also a actual story to Pinball Circus that didn't exist in the original game.
Fantastic. Well, I have one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. And back to Kingpin. So there's 9, 10 of the prototypes. They must be worth a ton of money. Any feedback from the owners about, I guess if these get manufactured like you guys are planning, those aren't going to be worth, I guess, a ton of money because they're not going to be as rare.
We're actually up to, we know of 5 of the owners that are happy and love what we're doing because they can't get replacement parts for their games. We've had owners whose translates got destroyed in a water leak, and so far the vast overwhelming response we've gotten is, hey, this is good for us.
This is good for pinball.
We've heard a whiff of one person, but they haven't come to us directly. It's been 3rd, 4th, 5th hand, but so far it's only that one kind of rumor we've gotten of that. But so far, there's the vast majority of these Kingpins are in Southern California, and they're kind of a close-knit group they're never going to sell their Kingpins. Right. Most of them won't. So it's some of them may have bought them because of its value, and that's a valid thing.
Actually, three of the original owners are supporting the project in a direct or indirect way. They're really behind it. Steve Sabota being one, Randy Peck being another, Pat Choi being another. Those guys couldn't. They've all 3 of those. Well, Steve hadn't bought a Translate. We need to force one on him. But no, those 3 guys are great guys. They're supporting it. The other 2 that Paul knows about, again, are supportive of it. If there is any that, like you said, rumor, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know who all 8 or 9 owners are, but the ones that we do know of have been vastly supportive.
Well, that's great news. Well, guys, best of luck to this. This is a fantastic project. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. I'm going to go play it today, I promise. And I just want to tell you guys how much I appreciate your time.
Have you bought a Translate?
I have not. I'm going to go look at this Translate too.
Are you going to buy one?
I may do that. I need to look at that.
No, it isn't a matter of may.
That's right. I got to play it.
No, Translate. You're gonna buy.
Thank y'all so much for joining us, and let's give our panel a big hand. Y'all have a great day at SFGE.
Thanks, guys.